Welcome to Education Insight. I'm Lacey Kendall. On today's show, we ask why college and university enrollment for males is decreasing while females are filling classes like never before. More on that in just a moment. But first, a look at what folks are talking about in local education. College students in the Inland Empire are finally beginning to see the cost of their course enrollments become much more transparent. Students and parents have long complained that it's too difficult to estimate how much money they'll actually need when there are additional fees, like books or software subscriptions, protective wear, special tools to purchase, or lab fees. But Assembly Bill 607 now requires California State University campuses and community colleges to begin disclosing upfront the estimated costs of course materials and fees this school year. Then it raises up to 40% on all courses by next year and increases consistently through 2028. The bill asks UCR campuses to do the same, but it did not make it a requirement for them. Cal State freshman Cadence Katse says she appreciates the new law.
I'm very happy that schools are becoming transparent with their prices. I have dealt with this in some of my classes where I have to pay for books that are around $40 to $50, books or software. And they take me by surprise, especially because I don't know about it when I go into the class. So it's nice to get this up ahead so that way I can plan accordingly or take a step back if I need to.
Women now make up 2/3 of all college students, while much fewer men are making it to college at all. Men are enrolling in college at historic lows and are 7% more likely to drop out than women. Colleges across the U.S. are trying different strategies to address the problem. For example, the University of Vermont runs entrepreneurship challenges to draw in young men interested in business. At the University of Montana, they promote outdoor programs like hunting and forestry to attract male students. And here in Southern California, USC uses grant money to help community colleges recruit and retain men of color. Despite all of these efforts, the problem continues to grow. The Heshinger report says it starts in high school. Girls perform better and graduate more often. A 2018 study found 88% of girls graduate on time, compared to 82% of boys. Now, some boys believe they don't need a degree for their careers, or they leave school early for job opportunities. And while schools are trying different methods, there's still no clear solution. But one local man working on that is Ernie Rios, the Vice President of College Success for One Future Coachella Valley. There he oversees the Gents Alliance program, which was developed to improve the college access and completion rates of men. Ernie, thanks for joining us on Education Insight today.
Thank you, Lacey.
So first of all, Ernie, could you describe your work helping young men in the Coachella Valley?
The One Future Coachella Valley is a nonprofit located in the Inland Empire, and our initiative, Gents Alliance, is focusing on supporting young men starting in 8th grade and transitioning with them into high school and then into post-secondary. Our goal is to make sure that our young men have the resources they need to be successful in school, career, and life. And we're mobilizing community partners to ensure that we're aligning those resources that are key to their success so we can support them through their academic and career pursuits.
Okay. I'm really glad you're here to help us understand this issue. Let's start with this. Back in 2021, we here on Education Insight reported that male college enrollment in California colleges and universities had dropped by 9%. This fall, we're already noticing even less men in our Inland Empire colleges and universities. Yet, even in the tough economic times we're having right now, Ernie, the recent number of women has dropped only slightly. Can you explain what the causes of this notable drop in men might be?
So there are several costs associated with pursuing a post-secondary education that we're finding our male students are having to deal with. This includes having to pay not only for their post-secondary education, but also having to work to support their families. In the wake of the pandemic, we're finding that many of our male students are being called on to play bigger roles in their households financially. It's no longer the case where we're having to support our young men to cover the cost of a post secondary education, but we're having to triage the entire family, having to support family with cost of living expenses, ensuring that the family as a whole has the resources that they need so we can help our young men focus on their education. In addition to the costs that our male students are incurring and are trying to overcome to pursue a post secondary education, we're also dealing with many of our young men feeling like they don't belong on college campuses. This is especially true for males of color. This feeling of being imposters, the imposter syndrome, not seeing themselves on the college campuses or having the resources that they need or being prepared for the classes that they need. Every year, we hear from our young men who share that while their schools, K 12 educational systems, were supportive of them and helping them navigate the college going process as they transition into post secondary, they feel like they could have used additional resources to be prepared for the courses they were taking or are taking in post secondary. So I think it's a combination of the costs of a post secondary education, the costs of students being able to pursue a post secondary education and contribute to their households and being prepared, making sure that they have the resources that they need to be successful. I do also want to share that what we're finding in the data is, and in working with our students, the purpose and relevance is becoming really key in the work that we're doing, demonstrating to students the value of a post secondary education. It used to be the case that our students saw the value of a post secondary education. It unlocks doors, supports upward economic mobility, as we've seen in the data time and time again. But we're now having to demonstrate that to our students, show them the value of a post secondary education and help them connect with employers and see the immediate results and value of that post secondary education.
Yeah. When my mother went to college in the 50s, according to her, her mother wanted her there not to find a career, but to do well and get educated, but especially to meet a man who was going somewhere, and that colleges were, quote, a man's place. So to me, it feels like we've flipped for the good and made a cultural shift. But the fact that now our male numbers are dropping, it just makes me wonder, could there be other reasons on top of the fact that men need to work more right now?
So Brookings Institute is reporting that as of 2020, 41% of students enrolled in post-secondary are men. So as we've seen the decline in males enrolling in college starting in the mid 80s, what we've been hearing and seeing in the data is that many of our young men are opting to enter the workforce to support their families. I think also in large part what's impacting the shift in enrollments is also students, males in particular, needing to see the purpose and relevance in the post secondary education, especially in the wake of the pandemic, where many of our male students find themselves having to contribute to their households, having to support their families, and wanting to see some immediate returns in the activities that they're engaging in the workplace, wanting to be able to, again, support their families. And so I think that's playing out in the enrollment rates that we're seeing across the state, country, and around the world for that matter. We're hearing reports across the country, certainly, and in other countries about low college going rates amongst male students, and again, the need to see the purpose and relevance in higher education.
You're listening to Education Insight. The Chronicle of Higher Education addressed this issue recently, and they pondered if we should be concerned about it. One point that they offered was that with few men in classrooms right now, the diversity dialogue and understanding of each other that is normally going on in classrooms is now way unequal. Does that concern you?
Yes, it does concern me. And as we're talking with our education partners, it's a concern that many have, not having enough male students to connect with. And also, as we see a decline in the number of males going into education, the need to be able to have role models in the classroom that students can look to and see themselves in those roles is equally important. This hits home for me personally, as I have a son that just started fourth grade, and not having a male teacher in the classroom really does make a difference. I oftentimes, as I speak with him about how his day went and how his male peers are learning, I hear over and over just not the connection to the teacher is at times not present because they feel like it's not resonating with them the way that the material is being taught or they're connecting to it.
Our conversation with Ernie Rios of One Future Coachella Valley continues in just a moment. This is Education Insight. Welcome back to Education Insight. Today we're looking at why young men are enrolling in colleges and universities at increasingly lower numbers and what's causing the change. Our guest is Ernie Rios of One Future Coachella Valley. There he oversees the Gents Alliance program, which helps young men find greater success through education. With what you've shared with us today here, Ernie, you've got me wondering, how can families influence young men in this matter?
I think families play a big role in supporting students and their success outcomes. And I think one of the most important factors for families is to be present. One of the barriers that I hear our young men deal with time and time again is not having their families present in their educational journey or as they start to explore careers. And in large part, especially in the wake of the pandemic, we have seen families that have had to take on 2 and in some instances 3 jobs. They're not present for their children. And unfortunately, that's impacting our young men. I share a story of a young man that recently enrolled in college at a CSU. A good friend of mine who's a counselor at this institution was meeting with the young man, and my friend's phone rang. And as the phone was ringing, this young man looks to the phone and at my friend, expecting my friend to pick up the phone. My friend tells the young man that he would not take the call because at that moment in time, the young man was the most important thing. Uh, just sitting there with him and hearing about his educational goals, his career pursuits, that was the priority. In that instant, the young man broke down, and he shared with my friend that as he was transitioning from high school into post secondary, rarely was he put first. There was always a race to ensure that he was in the right classes, that he was doing well academically,
Mm-hmm.
but never pausing to ask what he wanted. Putting him first, being present, listening to what he wanted. And I share that story because we hear it time and again amongst our young men. Oftentimes, there's the assumption that they are going to provide for their families. It's their responsibility. We also are supporting them into post secondary, and they move very quickly, completing applications, the FAFSA, completing their college university apps. But pausing to have a discussion with them is so key. And so I share that as it relates to families and how families influence our young men and their outcomes. Pausing and being present is very important. And so, as I shared in our work, we're not only supporting our male students, but also supporting the family,
Yeah.
looking at it holistically and making sure that we are supporting the family so that they can also help their student be successful into and through post secondary.
I want to go back about 10, 15 years ago, right here in the Inland Empire region. We noticed a huge slump in men and women skilled in trades and attending trade schools. And we started to address a need for those workers. So our region, San Bernardino and Riverside County, began programs to help high school graduates who were interested in that aim towards those schools and lucrative careers. My question is that what's happening in colleges and universities now that we need to again give a direct attention to?
The data does indicate that for those students that are in career academies, the CTE programs that have a focus on the trades, they are doing better academically. College going rates are a lot higher and completion rates are higher amongst our students that are in these programs. I have not seen a major shift in terms of the data and the work that I'm doing in respects to the percentage of students going into trade programs. However, I will share that for those students that do opt to go into the trade schools or programs, I think there's a need to ensure that we help the students understand the costs of the trade programs, because we are seeing students that are coming out of these trade schools and programs with higher student loan debt.
Mm.
And as they transition into the workforce, they're struggling with paying off that debt. And so, as part of our work with our young men who are expressing an interest to pursue these programs or careers, we want to make sure that they have the wraparound supports to understand and plan accordingly for these programs. We want to make sure they're successful, but I think it's critical that our young men understand, and their families understand, what type of program they're enrolling in, how they will pay for it, and then how they transition into the workforce. I think also for our higher education partners, and we have some great examples here in the Inland Empire, Cal State San Bernardino, UC Riverside, or community colleges that are really leaning into ensuring that our students have the supports to transition into their careers. So the career centers are really helping our students connect with employers and ensure that they're prepared for that transition. So I don't see a big shift again in the data that I oversee and in the work that I help lead in the Coachella Valley. But I will say that we are noticing trends in terms of that student loan debt among students that do enroll, and we're making sure the students have the supports that they need to be successful when they do graduate and enter the workforce.
Mm-hmm. You're listening to Education Insight. Well, that brings me to the thought, what should we be doing as a state, as the state of California, and as the Inland Empire at large with policy?
I think there's some really great points of light across the state that are focusing on resources for young men. Among them, I want to highlight is the CSU Males of Color Consortium, which is bringing together the CSU system in addition to community colleges, four-year colleges, universities across the state to really focus on best practices, learning opportunities that can help inform policy, and then taking those learnings and working with communities to ensure that we're embedding those best practices and learning from the work that's happening across the state. So I think supporting initiatives and efforts such as that CSU Young Males of Color Consortium is really important. Also, I think at a state policy level is making sure that we're allocating proper resources to address the needs that our male students have across the state. This is a major challenge that I find in our work, and some of our colleagues that are also in this work across the state are dealing with, is having the resources to stay the course with supporting our male students.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes we find that there's a lack of resources, funding to be able to sustain the programming and wraparound support services that we're trying to offer in partnership with our educational systems. And so I think it's critical to make that commitment at a state level, making sure that we're also looking at institutionalizing those best practices and learning opportunities in our educational systems to support more of our young men, scaling those resources for maximum impact.
Yeah. So let's talk about Ernie Rios and when he is at work, boots on the ground, out in the Coachella Valley working with One Future Coachella Valley. And I should add, the Gents program. What's your team working on to improve opportunities for young men?
So at One Future Coachella Valley, the Gents program is really leaning into understanding the needs amongst our young men. We've been working with Motivate Lab at the University of Virginia and CSU Los Angeles to study the needs that our students have so that we can best support them with holistic services. That includes ensuring that students not only have an academic and career plan as they transition from high school into post secondary, but also making sure that we're addressing mental health and wellness, supporting students with internships. We're working with our educational partners to make sure that we're meeting students where they're at in the schools, including their families in the dialogue around what they can do to support their students. Currently, we're preparing for our male Gents Alliance kickoff, which is going to help students prepare for the academic year. So we will provide students with wraparound supports throughout the academic year, counseling, advising, and it all starts this month at the kickoff, where students will be able to learn about the resources that will be made available to them so that they can be successful.
Ernie, are there other programs like the Gents Alliance that One Future Coachella Valley is operating in the Inland Empire? Let's say the Inland Empire proper, out in San Bernardino, Colton, Fontana. Is there someone doing that kind of work?
There are some great programs also in the Inland Empire. Blue Education Foundation is among them. Also, the African American Male Education Network and Development, known as A2MEND, is doing some great work to support African American males as they are also transitioning between systems of education. Collectively, we're all working together, sharing best practices and learning opportunities so that we can support our students in the Inland Empire. But these are two great programs that, again, are here in the Inland Empire that are doing some great work in the broader Inland Empire.
Ernie Rios. He is the Vice President of College Success at One Future Coachella Valley and an administrator for the Gents Alliance program, an initiative dedicated to supporting male scholars. Ernie, thank you so much for joining us on Education Insight today.
Thank you, Lacey.
We've all heard the stories of parents and community members that are angry with schools and districts and those contentious arguments over a variety of issues. Well, now imagine a new type of school where the parents, local business owners, neighborhood nonprofits, even the students all have a say and a vote on how their neighborhood school operates, where nearly everyone is happy because they all make the decisions that affect the kids together. It's called the Community Schools Model, and many inland campuses have already adopted it, and they're agreeing it works. Next week, we'll speak with an expert from the San Bernardino County Superintendent's Office who is helping schools in San Bernardino County and all over the U.S. to make the transition. So join us for the next Education Insight. I'm Lacey Kendall. Have a great week.
Education Insight is produced in partnership with KVCR San Bernardino.
Our executive producer is Jacob Poor.
And our production engineer is Tyler Veazey.
And Lacey Kendall is your host.
Support is provided by College Futures Foundation.
Some technical assistance provided by the College of Arts and Letters at Cal State San Bernardino.
Growing Inland Achievement. Working together for inland education and economic success.
Join us again next week for Education Insight.